There was one item on the menu that did well. That is the breakfast burrito. And that was when we realized, hey, there's no good halal Mexican concept in Singapore.
Then they signed a lease agreement. Now, for all of you watching, the most important thing in this whole thing is a lease agreement. Because a lease agreement means that you have to be committed to that place for a while. And sometimes lease agreement goes up to 3 years, to 6 years, to 9 years, 3 plus 3 plus 3, sometimes 2 plus 2 plus 2. I don't know, just read the contract very carefully. You're so excited to the point where you want to start and everybody's like, wow, this is so cool, man, we have our own cafe. You sign that document, and if it doesn't work out, and you have consecutive losses, then you have to get out of that agreement, and it's not so simple.
When your staff feel respected by you and by customers, they come to work feeling dignified. When they feel dignified, they feel motivated. When they feel motivated, they are more productive. When they're more productive, what happens? They perform better. And then when they perform better, revenue increases.
Welcome back to TFC Business Show. I'm your host Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut, and today is a iffy topic, right? Why? Later you will know why it's iffy. Okay, but I think it is an important topic to discuss as the markets go crazy, as all these changes are happening, labor crunch, business closure, all these different elements. So it's actually quite a good time to discuss how we're going to frame the future of business, how we're going to frame the way we interact as a society. So in partnership with RespectSG, I'm very happy to discuss this slightly iffy idea of respect, right? What does it mean and how does it translate to business owners like you and I, right? So, yeah, you get where we're going with this, huh? Yeah. So, you have a dog owner, you have to frame for us, like, why you need to respect, right? And the whole thing, yeah. So, in studio, we have our guest. For our audience that don't know you, could you introduce yourself?
Danny Loong, CEO of Timbre Group, among other things, also chairman of RespectSG.
Amongst other things. What other things?
It's a few things. So, what should I say? I do my thing at the SMU Academy and I don't know. That one is a different podcast, bro.
Okay, different podcast. We'll go there next time. But Timbre, I think we all grew up with Timbre.
Timbre Group,
Substation used to be the cool place. Okay, we don't go there. That's a different podcast.
I am Mustaffa. I am the founder and director of the Black Hole Group. We own and run a bunch of F&B
I think
concepts.
20, 30 brands.
No, not yet. Hopefully one day, but not yet. We have a bunch of different concepts across Singapore. Tipo Pasta Bar, Working Title, Small Batch, Botanic Gardens, and we try to keep it fun by creating new concepts.
Yeah, fair. So both of you are in the difficult industry,
very challenging industry.
The F&B industry.
In fact, we were discussing before the pandemic, the F&B industry is already difficult enough, already challenging, and now we have the pandemic is amplified, it's intensified.
Maybe before we go into the nitty-gritty, right? So help us lay the ground for our audience, right? For more context sake, right? Maybe some people know Timbre Group, maybe some people know Tipco and all this, right? But how many people do you work with? How big is the team? And all that. Just kind of lay the ground since we are going to go into a lot of these spaces.
We have about 80 plus employees. We run 2 hawker centers, one Punggol, Yishun Park. We also have Timbre Plus One North, Ayer Rajah.
Yeah.
And we're actually launching a new one next month at Timbre Plus Hillview, which is part of the whole new CMPB MINDEF building. So yeah, very excited. We have pivoted, thankfully in some ways, from restaurant bar. You mentioned Timbre Substation.
Yeah.
We have Arts House and all those. But the central core values still stay, live music, lifestyle, and we do a lot of events in-house. Content is an important thing for us. So we continue that with our Timbre Plus concepts.
Tell me a little bit more how the business transit and all that.
When we first started out, we were looking for a venue that we can have live music, right? So we want to support Singapore local bands, and I'm a musician myself. My heart was really all about that, really. I mean, having them a place for them to perform, to get better, to make a living. So those are things that we've always been focused on. I think as it goes along, and JTC, we had the opportunity at the One North Day.
I know I spent a lot of money there because I did a startup around the area.
Correct.
So I always
what I mean,
visit.
right?
Yeah.
But what's interesting about that one, about what I love about that is that the startup community is quite vibrant. So we always joke, even the nerds need to have a drink and talk,
It's true. It's true.
So we went in with the idea of placemaking, place management. You want to have meetings, come down, get your client. You don't have to be a beer. It could be a kopi. Doesn't matter. We have all kinds of beverage, but that's the whole idea lah. I think we kind of grew from 1 or 2 venues, and then we also do event management because we organize Beer Fest Asia, and as we grew the event side, and I'm an events guy, so we grew until now we have a one-off. We can sit about 900 to 1,000 people. We do concerts. So in some ways, we kind of built towards where we are right now, and also kind of innovate the way you look at a food pub. Some people say hawker center, but we're not really a hawker center because there's a big stage, there's LED screen and all. So we kind of innovate that way. Like we have 40 stalls, we have a band stage, we have a bottle shop with 120 different type of beers, incorporating beer fest in it. So to answer your question in a short way, it's really about looking at how the F&B industry was going, and we just wanted to reduce on the risks of running our own. Having said that, it's also because we at that time didn't focus so much on our food. Even though we are very popular because of our roasted duck pizza, we didn't put enough effort in that IP creation of food. So we are going back there now. So it's kind of full circle. Now back full circle, we're actually going back and we're going to be opening a Timbre cafe, very focused on also coffee and things like that. So it sounds like we're becoming like the Black Hole Group.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
He just Tarik the thing over to you, so I can end my job. They can do their own conversation. Yeah. But before you start, I just want one last point, right? So because we want to talk about respect, we will go there later,
sure.
Right? But respect sounds a bit iffy, okay? So it sounds like only the successful business people can talk a little bit about this high order conversation, okay? So you can share with me later, okay? But I just want to dig your brain a little bit. How has your margins evolved then from the small little, stage with you run your own thing, and then now becoming this kind of placemaking? How has that affected the business, and did that give you that space to then innovate and create new things? You know where I'm going with that, right? Yeah.
Generally speaking, I think, restaurants in the past, you make 15-20% of the net profit. That is quite reasonable. That has
now cannot even do that,
down,
really.
right?
Yeah.
So I joke in my class because I also teach at SMU, and I always talk about you see 2 business owners from F&B celebrating and having a beer or having a coffee, right? They may not be celebrating a profit. Maybe they're just celebrating their kind of broken even for the campaign survival and everything. So this is the nature of the beast right now. And I think at the end of the day, I think the margins have gone down, not just because of rent. A lot of people always, I see social media, they talk about rent. Yes, it is, of course, a major part. But it's also manpower. And that's why respect in the later part, maybe we can talk a little bit more. The good manpower, hard to find, and salaries are rising. It's not a bad thing, but the prices also not rising fast enough. You know what I mean? So there is this imbalance in the force. All of them sound like Star Wars.
Yeah.
Imbalance that we need to balance, and it's taking a bit of time to balance that because it requires the consumers to accept. Right? And sometimes it can be politicized, and I don't go there, but it's just that part where I think everybody need to work together to understand the F&B industry a bit more empathy also. Because all these hawker centers, all these hawker auntie uncle, sometimes their margins are
So your margins went up after you changed your business model. Yeah.
Or in that respect, in some ways it did stabilize. I won't say it went up, it stabilized to what we need it to be, but also our people need to change. You see, we used to run restaurants, right? Now they have to run a place. They have to manage tenants.
The expertise changes as well.
Change
right?
completely. You have to go and talk to auntie, uncle, auntie, uncle, this is that, affordable meal, how. So we have to switch on that kind of I wouldn't say it's landlord, I would call it more like a place manager, position, and we love all of them. I mean, I don't say this lightly, because they have to survive. They survive, we survive.
Yeah.
So it's
a
that kind of
symbiotic
tuck and tuck that we have to kind of pull and push and pull.
For you guys still run quote unquote traditional F&B type of business, right? So your margins are essentially 15-20%.
Slightly different journey from Timbre, but I can safely say that we we approach the journey with the same spirit, which is the spirit of innovation. Because in an industry like F&B, you have a great product. It goes viral. It does well. 6 months later, you're out of business.
I know.
So even if you found a formula, it will have to evolve with the times. We've been in this industry for 12 years now. Not we, me. I've been in industry for 12 years now, and we've always been on our toes. You get a formula right. Next year, it's not right anymore. You have to tweak something. So we always have to innovate. It's in our blood.
I want to go even deeper on that front, right? So the idea is, okay, I think people get where that's coming from, but I want to hear like a life story, like actual process that you guys have done, because you have done like so many concepts, right?
Okay.
So you definitely know like from the start, what sparked this thing first, right? Maybe something went viral somewhere.
Our very first concept, F&B concept, is called Working Title. Even that, we did not want to open it. We started with a backpackers hostel. It was a 5-story building, and URA said, okay, 2nd floor to 5th floor, you can build a hostel. 1st floor, you cannot put beds. Then we asked, so what can we do? They said, okay, you can sell products, a retail shop, or you can sell food. Then we thought, all right, sell food makes sense because the hostel guests, 62 people, they need to eat breakfast, drink coffee, have lunch, dinner. Start a cafe. So we started this cafe called Working Title, selling simple stuff like coffee, pizzas, sandwiches. So it did really well. The Straits Times picked it up, the media picked it up, people started coming, and when you go there, it's not like Singapore. It's like entering a foreign country, because travelers from all over the world will be chilling out there, right? So you enter, it's like, hey, where am I? Am I in Melbourne? That did really well. We had another opportunity to start another cafe at a location. So we thought, okay, let's replicate, call it a different thing. We called it After It. After It is a French term, l'esprit de l'escalier. After the stairs. That means there was this French politician who said something, and somebody asked something and he couldn't answer it. After that speech, he walked down the stairs and then he realized, I should have said this. That's a phenomenon called After It. L'esprit de l'escalier. So we started this cafe called After It, and we made it like a cookie cutter brunch hipster cafe selling eggs Benedict, avocado on toast. And then we realized it didn't work out. But there was one item on the menu that did well. That is the breakfast burrito. And that was when we realized, hey, there's no good halal Mexican concept in Singapore. There was a blue ocean. There are Mexican restaurants, and then there are already many brunch hipster cafes at a point in time, but there's nothing that offers good halal Mexican food. So we thought, let's zoom in on this. Let's quickly zoom in on this and quickly tweak the concept from After It, the brunch cafe, to After It, the Mexican taqueria. And that's when things shaped up and did better. And until today, we are still operating. We're still running now after 11 years.
How many months do you give that before you tweak the concept?
We did the brunch thing for about 3 months. Didn't work out, but we quickly pivoted to...
Very good. I think that's a very clear lesson.
Yeah,
right?
6
Because there's
months.
a burn rate, right?
There's a burn rate. So you really had to do something. You had to close down. You had to quickly do something about it. We did it. Within 6 months, changed to a Mexican taqueria, and still running after 11 years.
Maybe just want to hear, your point of view, right? Like, how has it been from a cost management standpoint? Are rents, difficult for you?
In a way, you look at rent, it's fixed cost. If your rent is $10,000, as an absolute figure, it's fixed, 10,000. But where it changes is when you increase your revenue. So if you earn $50,000, 10,000 is 20% of that. But if you can increase your revenue to 100, and then your rent percentage becomes 10%. So for my business model, we try to commit to a property that will enable us to manage rent to be 10%. So if I look at a property and I think, and the offer is 10,000, I need to make sure that I plan the property in such a way that they can earn $100,000. And there's some planning involved. And it cannot, if I feel like I cannot squeeze in to earn 100,000, need to have 100 tables. And if you feel like you cannot fill in 100 tables, then
it's not the game.
It's not the game. And then if you feel like you cannot do it, then better not. If I feel like I cannot achieve the rent below 10%, it's very tricky.
I feel like my audience would scold me if I don't ask further, right?
Okay,
Can you share a bit more
come.
like the juice? Like, how do you plan this? Confirm some internal formulas around this, right? Some assumptions.
Models like this it's very difficult. Be very simplistic and reductionistic, I would say, to take a model that works and apply it to every single business. If you're a big company, then you're playing a different game. because you can turn over 3-4 times. But smaller brands that are starting out, you cannot apply the same model and expect that the same kind of rent can produce the same kind of revenue. So you need to understand the concept and apply it to where you are. If you're a small brand name and nobody has heard of your brand at all, then you cannot expect to go into a big mall with a high rent and expect people to walk in. So once you've started out and you've built a brand name over the years, then you're confident enough to go into a small space in a big mall that charges you a premium rent, then you can expect there will be queues there. But if not, it's going to be quite tricky. Not all brands will benefit similarly from the same model.
For sure. So maybe we take an example on that, right? So okay, your first principle of thought is we try to keep fixed cost of rent at 10% of the overall, business, right? So you have to target 10x revenue essentially, right? So you got to scope that as a result of the offering in the market, what's going on, based on the location, who will come to this area, all that juice, right? So, but I'm just throwing random things as an outsider of the business, right? Maybe you can give us some like core things that you will evaluate. Let's say today if we open at Haji Lane or we open at somewhere, Chinatown, some like new space that open up, how will you kind of scope this? Maybe walk us through a little bit.
To expound a little bit on the point just now. So you have a space, then the rent is 10,000. Now you know roughly I need to earn 100,000 for this to be worth it. And that's not to say that if your rent is above 10% is you're not making money. But then the next question is it worth it? If you pay rent 10,000 and then your revenue is 50,000, you can still make a profit. But you also got to ask yourself, after all the hard work, after putting in 80 hours a week and paying this staff, your cost for operation is 49,000. Your profit is $1,000 after all that effort. Then you earn $1,000. Then you got to ask yourself, first of all, is that worth it, 1,000? Secondly, is there a bigger purpose to this? Maybe you earn 1,000 is okay, but in that 1 month you're building a brand. Then you got to quickly seize the opportunity to like, okay, today I earn 1,000 is okay, but next time this happens over 12 months and then in 1 year I build a brand, 10,000 people that have known this brand and I can franchise it and then I can build it and then I can open a second outlet. So I think you got to see, you cannot have a myopic view on how you want to build this business. It's got to be, you earn 1,000, sure, but what's the long game in this? That's number one. Number two, on my part, 10% is the rent. And then there are two other major components, which is the cost of goods and cost of labor. How I measure it in my organization is that cost of goods and cost of labor combined cannot be more than 50%. So if your cost of good is 20%, your cost of labor is 30% of the total revenue, right? Yeah. And sometimes the cost of labor is 30%, that means the cost of goods needs to go down, but it needs to be a compromise. So basically, if you hire expensive chef, he needs to be capable enough to manage the cost of goods such as it's low. But if your cost of labor is a bit lower, that means they're not capable enough, but you have a bit more leeway for the cost of labor. But whatever it is,
things,
exactly. A good chef would be able to take a regular tomato and make it taste super delicious.
And then sell you at $20.
Yes, exactly. So, but whatever it is combined, it cannot be more than 50%. If not, it's a red flag for me.
Okay.
And then again, even if it's 55 or 60%, sure. But what is the long game? Sure. 60%, maybe we give 1-for-1 or free products out. But the long game is that, am I building a brand? There needs to be a long game in this. If not, you got to start questioning and then you got to press the button, or you got to change concepts, or you got to con somebody into
exit to somebody, right?
These are the three major components: the rent, the cost of labor, and cost of goods. If you can manage them, then you got one challenge under control.
Of course.
But that is not sufficient. Then you got to see how this package, right, can take you over the next year and the next year, the sustainability of it. Because this model, does it work because it's a trend, it's trending, or will it be an evergreen concept? A chicken rice shop, right? Today we eat it, 10 years later we still eat it.
Just to add a small point, I think it's really about the business model.
Yeah.
And what kind of revenue streams you can build. For example, my new cafe is a regular cafe. It's what we follow too. Now, you add on to the part about whether you can do catering, whether you can do private functions, whether you can even go into some kind of culinary workshops. So you kind of have to depend on other things that can bring you the income and also help market your place. It's no longer the case where you can just have one or two revenue streams. In the past, yes, because, labor was less, rental was less, people were willing to pay, and then the suppliers were kinder. But in this market right now, you got to be very creative. And somebody was just talking to me about it. At the end of the day, it's about the experience. They walk into the Black Hole Group or they walk into the Timbre Group, they experience something that it's like, wow, this is cool, man. That part comes with customer service, it comes with pride, it comes with sense of ownership from our staff, so combination of everything. And it's kind of all related to back to the respect SG. What we stand for. The fundamentals are that your people need to drive your brand.
What I'm hearing is it's not coming from random, right? It's from the business struggles that you have, the day-to-day function that you think like, oh, this thing needs to be solved in some shape or form, right? So maybe founder, chairman can share a bit yeah, Respect SG, what is it about?
I mean, give you a bit of context. We are all Singaporeans here. We're quite proud of the fact our food culture has always been strong. We are very proud of our food, our hawker culture. I'll start with that premise because I think when I talk to Moose, the part about how F&B and how being in F&B has helped me personally. When I was just 18 years old, working as a waiter at Duxton of all places, very dark place at that time. I was 18 and I was working at a restaurant, and you know what? Waiting for NS, 6 months that I was there, I learned so much that I didn't learn in school. I'm telling you, man. I mean, walked in, I got scolded by my captain. Those days got captain because I was focusing on the band. At that time, I was like watching the band when I was changing the eyes and all. Then he brought me out, come. He scolded me by old school. And I appreciate that because there's this sense of pride that he was angry at me. Why? Hey, focus, can you focus? Coming back to Respect SG, I always thought that our young Sec 5, Sec 4, Sec 3 students can have that experience working in F&B like I had. Right. Firstly, you work with F&B, you kind of respect the job, the industry. It's not, you hear all the jokes, you want to work F&B, that means you never botak which is, I'm very, very insulted by that, because it's a respectable profession.
I think what people call it an honest career,
it's an
right?
honest career,
yes.
respectful in some ways because you are serving people food. You're giving them an experience. So that's one. The other thing is that I think with younger Singaporeans, because of social media technology, we wanted to have something that can encourage them to talk to people, customers, fellow colleagues, and also learn a bit about entrepreneurship from people like Moose, myself. If they have any dreams of wanting to open their bakery or cafe, they can talk to us first. And better, you talk to us first. So we can just share some of our mistakes and some helpful tips for them. So when I'm having coffee with Musa, there's one of those times I tell you in my life, I said have coffee back and forth. Then suddenly we say, okay, let's do it. That's all. Then we didn't even know where do we go next. So thankfully we got some very good people in to build this thing. But we are the only organization right now that provides internship for Sec 3, Sec 4, Sec 5 in actual F&B operations with our partners like we mentioned just now, OUE, we have,
McDonald's.
Commonwealth. And we work with them very closely for their staff to also learn about mentorship. So we actually teach the managers and chefs, how do you actually be a more effective mentor? So can you imagine if one of the managers could be an ex-offender, but he's a mentor? Why not? He could have something he can teach a younger person. And that connection we made. I'm very proud to say that most of the kids, most of the youths that go through our program have only positive things to say about this. And that brings me a lot of pride. And also, I think we mentioned just now about social compact and social mixing. Whatever school you come from, whether you're a top school or not, or neighborhood school or what kind of school you are, you need to be able to communicate with other people. And I'm not just talking about the different schools, I'm talking about different race. I'm talking about different backgrounds. I think that's so important. It creates the kind of understanding, creates the kind of respect that we need in the society.
I want to push a little bit on that whole internship, for the youth, right? So last time when we do it, we call part-time, right? So what is so different, working at McDonald's part-time and working at McDonald's on the internship?
So surely there are some young people who are driven to go work part-time. I mean, I'm sure there are some who perhaps want to help the family with income. Not every young person or parent or teacher would understand the benefits of having a child, having a youth go into F&B. There's a bit of that, like you said, a little bit of I think not don't send to work as a waiter or but I feel completely differently. I think that if my son grows up, I will ask him to work part-time, but that's just me, right? So we want to offer opportunity for the youth to go into it for 3 weeks. If they want to stay as a part-timer, they can. If they want to move on and do other things, it's also okay.
Oh, okay.
Right? But it creates a new mindset. And I think this is what we talked about, Moose and I, about mindset. Singapore needs a different mindset.
Okay.
And I think service people needs a different mindset.
So it's a 3-week organized internship program where you kind of rotate different function, get a sense of the space. Is that kind of how it works? Or
They are assigned a job, but I think we have a leadership resilience workshop in the beginning and at the end. In fact, this is quite a well packaged program because we also tell them to have an innovation challenge whereby they can come out with new ideas for F&B because we want to understand the Gen Z and now apparently it's Alpha. In order for us to be connected to this young generation, we need to be able to communicate with them, right? So the whole program is not just about working in the restaurant. They will meet people like Moose or myself. Pauline and Dion and all the whole team will also talk about self-awareness. We'll talk about leadership, servant leadership. And there's a two-way conversation because they will also then say to us, this restaurant is nice but a bit boring. Why? Why wouldn't I go there because of this? Why is your app not working very well? Etc. etc. And we'll listen to them. I think it's important to listen to our young people.
Add on to Dennis, like he mentioned, there are different elements to this. It's not just a job. It's also networking. It's also, for many of them, it's their first time working outside of school. It allows them that safe environment to be in school still and go out to work. After all, they're only 15, right? They also go through social mixing. They mix with other students from other schools across Singapore, so they have an idea of like, oh, this school does it like that, this school does it like that. And some of the students, after completion of the program in their school holidays, they come back to apply for a job. Like, hey, I really enjoyed my 3 weeks here. Can I come back now as a part-timer? Yeah. But essentially is that there are different elements to just a part-time job earning money. Because if that's what they wanted to do, then they can just find something, right?
One more important point, we are also trying to groom, hopefully some of them will want to be their own business owner in F&B. And so good that they hear from the people who have done it, and they can always come back to us and say, hey, I need some advice. So the mentorship doesn't stop right after the internship. They are in touch with us, social media, they have our email addresses. They can come back to us. But why do I say this? Because we need the next generation of creative F&B entrepreneurs, right? And so we want to be there to sort of handhold a little bit because I tell you honestly, people ask me in class, I want to start a restaurant and cafe. I will say, don't do it. That's one. And I will ask the second question. Any of you work as a waiter before? Then there'll be maybe 2 or 3 hands out of 20. Okay, those ones, maybe consider it. Those who haven't, go and work as a waiter first.
It's interesting how a lot of professionals, for some reason, think they can quit their job and just join the sector and make it work, right? You got anything to tell to them? Anything you want to say?
That is one of the components of RespectSG. So we have, aside from the Respect Work Attachment Program, we plan to develop the Respect Entrepreneurship Program. Because what I found, last year, I think we read the news, right? 3,000 closures for F&B, over 3,000 closures for F&B. And we thought, okay, F&B, low barriers of entry. You have 50,000 or 100,000, you can set up something.
Really? 50,000, what can I set up? Today, if I give you 50,000, what will you set up?
You can set up something very small. But whether it will last 10 years, that's a different question. That's a different topic altogether.
The rental has to be 10%.
Yeah. So it has to be like 5,000.
COG, COL 50%. But in the period that these 3,000 F&Bs operated, I don't know, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, they are taking up market share of also the existing businesses that gets consumers from the same pool of people, right? So when these new guys come in, they sell this cool product, they survive for 6 months, but in the meantime, they get a couple percentage of market share. And then we lose a market share. It's not a bad thing. It's a free country. You can set up whatever business you want, but they lost their investment because in 6 months they're going to close down. We lost market share in that 6 months times 3,000 players that are opening every year and closing every year. Might as well you work the newer people coming, the new entrepreneurs, up-and-coming entrepreneurs that have ideas, work with seasoned players. Maybe we can invest, we can be part of your business. You will have some sort of mentorship and guidance. You will ensure that your business will be sustainable and can go a long way with that right guidance. We are also invested in making sure your small startup succeeds because it's a win-win situation. That way we can try to reduce the number of closures instead of 3,000, maybe like 10% of that, 300. Hopefully that we can establish this program where the older entrepreneurs can get the younger entrepreneurs so that everybody has a piece of the pie.
Okay.
And everybody wins. The country wins.
So if I have a good idea, you will invest in the idea.
Yeah,
Me or one of our contacts, somebody who's willing to invest, has the money and believes in the idea. And if nobody believes in your idea, then that should be a reflect for you that maybe you shouldn't open it, right?
Yeah, you are the problem, right?
You are the problem, yeah.
Let me be a little bit, let's imagine that someone thinks that they have a great idea. And there's always this adrenaline, like when you start F&B or even event management, I've seen it so many times. Adrenaline, yeah, bro, bro. I think
Sure
can.
Sure
Sure
can
one. Bro tell another bro, then they'll go to their parents and say, sure can one. I need $100,000. Then they do it. Then they sign a lease agreement. Now, for all of you watching, the most important thing in this whole thing is a lease agreement. Because a lease agreement means that you have to be committed to that place for a while. And sometimes lease agreement goes up to 3 years, to 6 years, to 9 years, 3 plus 3 plus 3, sometimes 2 plus 2 plus 2. I don't know. Just read the contract very carefully. You're so excited to the point where you want to start and everybody's like, wow, this is so cool, man. We have our own cafe. You sign that document, and if it doesn't work out, and you have consecutive losses, then you have to get out of that agreement. And it's not so simple.
Yeah.
You have to find someone to take over, or you have to just cut your losses and pay a penalty. And I'm telling you, that part is a sad part, because you think you've lost 100,000, for example. You don't even know how much more because of this lease agreement. So my point is that I think just have to be very careful. It's not like an IT business or startup where you can get subsidized rent, maybe from JTC or one of those. Yeah, it's true, right? Then you have, very minimal workforce in that. In the case of opening a restaurant, there's a lot more risk because when you sign the lease agreement, it's hard to come out. That's what I'm saying. In the IT, you can work at home. Steve Jobs worked in a garage. I'm not saying there are no challenges, but you don't sign a lease agreement. You can just, that part is the
that part is true. Yeah.
The main point is this, like F&B, seemingly it's an easy industry to get into, very low barriers of entry, but
the word is seemingly.
Yeah. But if you don't do it right, so many people lose out from it, from your endeavor, your parents, your investors, your own time and effort, the current players in the industry, the landlord also possibly could lose out because now, I gave it to you for 3 years, bankrupt or whatever, you run away, then I got to look for a new tenant. Nobody wins from this affair. I think it's better that we look at it collectively at the bigger picture. If somebody starts and is a serious player, I want you to succeed, then don't shake the industry so much,
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's better that you do it well, and then we're happy to see a fellow young entrepreneur succeed.
I was having a conversation with Kai earlier, and the word about vibrancy, right? I mean, at the end of the day, Singapore is known for our food. We are known for our food. Really, seriously. 10 years ago, my Australian friends was, hey, I want to try this chicken rice. Okay, fine. I mean, to me, I grew up with it. I'm Hainanese. Yeah. I grew up with chicken rice, but they can see their face. Like, wow, I'm going to try that. Chili crab, we have to understand also a healthy F&B industry helps our tourism. Without a healthy F&B, I'm talking about Singapore brands, Singapore recipes, whether it's nasi padang or whether it's whatever it is that you have. If you don't have a healthy F&B industry, it actually does affect the general perception of Singapore. And so, I'm working very hard to have this vibrancy piece.
Maybe we zoom out, because you guys, when talking about some of your initiatives, are great, right? So if we zoom out a little bit, ultimately, what do you want to achieve, right, as a platform?
In order to answer that, I think we have to go back to why RespectSG was incepted. Some years ago, I think right after the pandemic, like I mentioned, F&B was already a tough industry to begin with. After the pandemic, it got even harder, intensified the problem. So all the symptoms that we saw prior to the pandemic, manpower constraints, nobody wanting to join the industry, increasing rental rates, increasing cost of goods, all these were problems and symptoms already. But after the pandemic, it got amplified, it got intensified, and we realized, wow, we gotta sort this out. And one of the issues that we were facing, the core issues we were facing, manpower. The quota from Ministry of Manpower were tightened. It was a bit harder for us to get foreign labor to supplement the local workforce. And Singaporeans themselves are not naturally inclined to join the F&B industry.
So refined, naturally inclined. People just don't
naturally
want to do that because long
because
hours, tiring, right? And
I
Singapore's
think
got a lot of options.
we
maybe.
got to back like to the foundational years of Singapore's independence. I think they were a bit more focused in building the country. So you would encourage your kids to study law, accountancy, engineering. I think we had to go through that phase in order to stabilize the economy. But now we are kind of like trying to shift the perception where there are multiple pathways to success, not just via engineering or law or accountancy, but also if you look across the world, you go to places like Denmark and Australia, people aspire to become chefs. Or in Japan, people take their job in these industries very seriously.
It's true.
Serving, service, preparing food. I was watching a documentary about a sushi chef. His name is Jiro. I think the title of the show is Jiro Dreams of Sushi. The apprentice, right, will take 1 year to just to do the rice part or to cook the seaweed, and then after 1 or 2 years, you're good enough, then you move on to the next. And they take it as a 20-year career in the F&B in making sushi. But in Singapore, we don't have that yet. Things happen so quickly and we have different aspirations back in the day. There's shifting perspective in F&B industry. But is it happening fast enough? I don't know. So instead of trying to solve the problem by going to MOM and saying, like, hey, you need to have more quota, because for me, that's a Panadol fix. Not enough staff, get more foreign labor to come in and support. Not enough staff and do that. But we have to kind of build it from within. We got to encourage people within Singapore to say, hey, this is, if you enjoy cooking, if you enjoy service, this is a possible path that you can embark on. And via interaction with the people in the industry, you realize that if you are a waiter in day one or you are a commie cook in day one, that's not what you are going to be for the next 20 years. There is career progression. The CEO of McDonald's once upon a time was a part-timer flipping burgers. In the end, he worked his way up right to the top of the organization in US, right? The same way in Singapore, my current CEO in the Black Hole Group, he started off as an intern 5 years ago in the Black Hole Group, worked his way up to be ops manager, head of ops, and now he's the CEO of the organization. So there is a career pathway, and there is a way that you can progress in the F&B industry. And that's the basic message that we want to tell people, that this is in line with the national message of there are multiple pathways to success, not just what you think has been taught to you from a young age, right? Yeah. And secondly, I think respect is a very important component of our job. We have to view respect as since this is a financial podcast, right? Respect, you have to look at it as a currency. And if you ask me today, we are in deficit. We need to bring it up to a surplus, like how do we, but it cannot be a prescriptive thing. Hey, say thank you to uncle. Sometimes parents do that. Say thank you. You cannot force people to respect. It needs to be intrinsic. It needs to come from within. But how do we harness it? It takes time, right? And from a productivity of, if you're a business person, you say, let's say you don't care, you don't care, respect, don't care, I don't care, as long as I make my money, then you should think about this, because when your staff feel respected by you and by customers, they come to work feeling dignified. When they feel dignified, they feel motivated. When they feel motivated, they are more productive. When they're more productive, what happens? They perform better. And then when they perform better, revenue increases. So if you're a business owner and you can't connect the dots to and realize that respect, this movement is important, then this is how I can lay it down and try to make you understand that respect will have long-term benefits for you, for the industry, and for society. And this is something that we should take very seriously.
So just to be clear, right, that the whole line of what you just said is not a trope. You have seen it in your organization, and it has translated in that sense.
It is not, but it is, after all, a very abstract concept.
Yeah,
it's not
that's
like,
what I wanted to ask. Whether have you seen it in your organization?
Seeing it is very difficult to point, because there are so many moving parts. But the way I see it exists. There is an effect. You need to have the wisdom, and you need to be able to take a long-term perspective in this, because and over time you'll be able to measure it. Because today maybe your turnover rate is this much, but if people come to work happy, you measure and you like, okay, I got 100 staff. Before that, everybody average staying retention is 6 months. But after I changed my behavior to be more respectful, for example, everybody started staying longer. And then now I measure average retention rate, I don't know, 18 months. And then you realize, okay, perhaps it's better money, but perhaps also it's because of respect.
Okay.
So I think that's one way of measuring how having more respect is more effective and for productivity and for retention.
From the employer point of view, right? From the Tauke's point of view, what do I then need to put in, right? Because, all these things sound like it could solve a lot of the F&B, bosses' problems, right? Like potentially you can encourage more people to join the sector. You have a stronger pipeline of people that work with you, potentially could increase revenue and all that, right? But what are you then going to put on the table to get that going, right? I mean, you guys are running the program, right? So you're already putting in the extra. But from a wage increment, angle, from a training angle and all that, right? If a boss is listening to this and say, okay, I'll do it, right? Then what do I need to put in? How much more do I need to allocate to it?
That's a question for individual bosses lah. We can't say generally what, I mean, it's a HR policy that we do, right?
Maybe you can share a little bit on what have you all done?
For me, we've changed our HR policy quite a bit lah. I think trying to let our staff have a bit more ownership and transparency in terms of the numbers. Because at the end of the day, staff retention, they know what they have to achieve, the targets they have to achieve, and they hit those targets, and you don't reward them. It's a bit weird. So not good lah. They are in a way part of the whole process. And we actually came out with a whole new way of looking at it. We had to. Because right now, when you have 1,000 people waiting to join F&B and now it's only 100, you have to quickly think about how you're going to retain that 100. Secondly, I think, business model has to change. How we actually think about business model for F&B. I think the sooner you think about how your colleagues, your staff, they have an understanding of the numbers. Because let me just say that the traditional bosses of F&B, some of them, not all, they'll just say, okay, top line, I need this. They don't explain anything. Then your staff won't do extra. Right? They won't understand that they actually have to be part of the whole process.
Maybe if I can add, for me, I think 3 more basic ways so that there's a bit more clarity. Number one, for bigger F&B groups who can afford it, it would be really appreciated if you can come forward and fund us. They can contact myself or Danny and speak about how they're willing to fund us.
Not pay more to the people.
Pay more to the people, but I think that's shorter term view. But to take a longer term view, sit down with us, have a chat with us, and see how they can fund us. Because I think we gotta really take a longer term view on this. Because the future of the workforce, they are 3 years old, 6 years old, 10 years old. I think we gotta prepare for the future of Singapore. That's number one. Talk about funding. How can we continue to fund this program so that it continues to benefit more people? Secondly, how they can help is to provide platforms. So other FM groups that we haven't reached out to and schools that we haven't reached out to for them to reach out to us and have a conversation with us. For the FMB groups, we will need more platforms to place these students. They cannot just go to Black Hole Group Concepts and Timbre. I think right now we have McDonald's.
We need more places,
places and variety, because some of them might not like to work in my kind of environment or his kind. Or they don't want McDonald's, so they want a more fancy restaurant, some want hawker center. So more options would be great. Secondly, for schools to believe in this program and that to understand that in school you can only learn certain things in life. Some things you gotta go out there, face difficult people, face angry people, and then you pick up soft skills. That's how we were chatting. You look at micro expression, somebody is frowning, you want to serve coffee. As a 15-year-old, you can learn to go there and you learn to be charming. This, in 10 years' time, you learn to negotiate better with people. These are soft skills that you can learn a little bit in the textbook in school, but when you deal with real angry people, then you realize, wow. Yeah. So some of my best years, right? I studied in NUS psychology, I studied in Singapore schools, but some of my best education is when I was working in working title, serving coffee, wiping tables, and then dealing with people. And then I learned to be charming. I learned to negotiate. I learned to not be shy and ask people about their day, where do they come from. You learn to converse. And these are things that I did not learn in school. You learn it when you are serving people. That's two, right? One is fund us, give more money to the movement. Second is to provide the platform for the students to power their trade. Third, if you cannot afford any of this, at least to help us share the word. And if you believe that this is something that is good for the industry and for society in general, the word of RespectSG and how this will benefit you, your family, the younger generations.
Awesome. Okay. I think that was a good one. So if let's say somebody wants to understand more about what you guys do at RespectSG,
Just look for Respect Singapore or Respect SG or Respect.SG. You'll find us. The young people that have come our way, there's a few of them who actually say, I never thought I would say this, but I think I want to be a chef. And you know, the country cannot be made up of just accountants, and on a larger level, we need to appreciate each other.
Just to share a glimpse of the impact of respect. One of the students from one of the top schools in Singapore, after he completed this 3 weeks program, he came up to me personally and he said, "Sir, I really benefited from this program and I will never disrespect a service staff ever again, because now I understand how difficult it is to be standing there for 10 hours a day serving people."
all the best. And we hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you would like to check out the movement, respect.sg. And if not, we'll see you at the next episode. Meanwhile, take care. See you all.
See you.
Bye-bye.